Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Job Chicks podcast. We're your hosts, Melissa and Brittany.
This is a podcast meant to bring you special insight into executive career search, networking, long-term career management, spirituality, and much more.
Brittany and I are full-time executive career coaches helping dozens of executives manage their brand and their career goals.
We work with individuals spanning almost every industry with a variety of high-level titles, including C-suite.
This podcast will give you a deeper understanding of how we coach and assist executives just like you every single day.
We are so happy that you're here, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Job Chicks podcast. I'm very excited about our guest today. It's very timely with our new president coming in January. And our guest today has over 30 years of experience owning businesses and bringing economic opportunities to the citizens of West Virginia. In addition to his business interests, he has been involved in political leadership for 15 years, most recently serving with the governor, Jim Justice, as his Secretary of Administration. He continues to create jobs as he now serves as a consultant for economic development projects throughout the state. He and his wife have 2 married daughters and a 2-year-old granddaughter. And today's guest, we welcome Mark Scott. Hi, Mark. How are you today?
Doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we are very excited about today's podcast. Brittany and I, for our listeners out there who don't know, are political junkies.
Yes,
we love talking politics, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of good questions for you today. We are going to keep it somewhat politically correct if we can, but we do have a lot that we want to talk about. We want to talk a little bit about your career, and we want to talk about what's coming up in 2025. So if you want to start off by telling us, how did you get into politics? What made you interested, and what keeps you there?
Well, being in the state of West Virginia for decades, we saw just policies from our state house that just did not bode well for economic development and business development in the state of West Virginia. And so, being a small business owner in the central part of the state, just saw the need to if there's anything I could do to help affect change in the state, I would love to be able to do it. And that started for me while I was a business owner. I became a city councilman in our little town in the middle part of our state, and did that for 6 years. That led to an opportunity to become a county commissioner. I did that for 5 years, and then I got a call before my term was over from the governor of the state, who asked me if I'd be interested in being involved in his cabinet, which I decided to do. And the whole purpose behind it was making economic changes in our state that just makes our state better. And we've seen a huge influx because of the policies of the current administration in our state and our legislature. We've seen a huge influx of business and business development, and I'm so proud to have been a part of that.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. It's so exciting to hear about. I mean, being tapped on the shoulder after being in your city and then being tapped on the shoulder by the governor is pretty exciting. I know that if that were me, I would be very excited. You are currently, which I did leave out in your intro, you are currently a Browning client. So Browning Associates, you're working with Brittany. And tell us a little bit about your experience and coming to Browning and what you've really had so far as an experience with us and why you chose to come.
I've had a fantastic experience with Browning, and I will tell you, knowing that our governor was term limited and would be leaving office in January, and he took Joe Manchin's place in the U.S. Senate, so he's going to be going to Washington in January, and knowing that that was going to happen, I decided to take a look at what the options were in the private sector. And so I reached out to different firms, and what I loved about Browning is it's all about relationships with Browning. And it's all about building a network or using the network that you currently have and knowing how to properly brand and market yourself. So, none of the other firms that I spoke with said anything about that. Most of them want to do the work for you. You pay them, they get you a job. Well, that's not teaching a person how to fish. That's learning to fish for a day, and not fishing for a lifetime. And so what intrigued me about the Browning approach is the ability to build and increase your network and having relationships that last you for a lifetime. And so no matter where you go in life, no matter what your station is or your future, you've got that network of people. And I will tell you, the people within Browning that I've had the opportunity to meet have been some of the most wonderful people. The philosophy of Browning and who they bring to the company is just tremendous. And I've just had a fantastic experience networking and growing that network.
That's music to our ears, because that is truly the core of what we do here at Browning, is teaching people to network. Every connection has opportunity, and we want to make sure that, we can teach our clients to fish. We don't want to just, throw the fish at you. We want you to learn how to do it, because you never know when you're going to be in that situation again.
Exactly. And Brittany and the whole team have done a tremendous job of helping me to properly brand myself, and then also, make the right presentation, make the right introductions, and really truly build on a mutually beneficial relationship.
I love it.
You are so easy to put my stamp of approval on, because let's face it, Melissa's totally going to agree with this. When we connect people together, our reputation is also on the line. And, I always want to make sure I can put the Brittany stamp of approval and the Browning stamp of approval when I connect people to people. You are one of the easiest people to connect to whomever, because you have such an open mind, you have such an open heart. And for our listeners out there, they should know that I've actually had the opportunity to fly down to West Virginia, meet you in person. I've had dinner with you and your wife. I've been able to watch you in action for an entire day, really, and watch you lead as a leader in action. And it all kind of connects for me. It makes total sense why you're so easy to pass up to connect to really whomever. You lead with your heart. You have such an open mind. You really, truly care about people. And that shines through in everything you do and in everything you say.
Well, I think that's what got me into public service to begin with, right? Is really, it's about making the lives of people better. And, I was able to do that in Department of Administration and, really begin to invest in the lives of people that, felt like they were dealing with a captive audience. They were in state government. It was a very, just an environment of overregulation, and the answer was always no. And being able to work with them and create a culture where we are not saying no without giving people the opportunity to get to a yes. And we were able to do that. We were able to develop our middle managers. And, the proudest moments I take away from being a cabinet secretary is that I left that culture in place. My deputy took over after I left and has continued to really invest in the people that do the work every day. And I'm afraid we've got way too many leaders out there that they do not do that. And so having the ability to, listen to what the needs are and being able to rally the resources and put them in the right place made all the difference in the world, Department of Administration.
Yeah. And it's exciting that Brittany gets to work with someone like you, because she can learn a lot too, because she eventually wants to have some career in politics as well. So it's exciting for me to see that, where she can meet with you and she was able to fly down there and see what it's all about. So I think it's a great partnership for the both of you.
Yeah, again, it goes back. What are we talking about? Mutually beneficial partnerships, whether it's with
Right.
the coaches we're working with or whether it's with the individuals that we're meeting within our network. How do we bring value to people's lives? And that's really what life should be about, is bringing value to people's lives. And that is my philosophy as a leader, is how do we bring value to the people that we're leading? How do we make their lives better? And by making their lives better, everything improves. Their life outside of work improves. Their performance improves. Everything rises and falls on the ability to feel valued and respected, and that you're needed in the process, and that you really have a valuable role regardless of where you are within the organization. You are important and valued.
Yeah. Well, I know that someday Brittany's going to be a phenomenal constituent somewhere. She'll be a phenomenal leader in the political world. So I'm excited to see that develop for her.
Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, and I'm just so honored to have people like Mark in my corner to learn from. Actually, Melissa, when we were asked to do Queen City Women in Business, Mark was one of the first people I texted. And I'm like, hey, where can I find valuable information about this, that, and the other? And within minutes, he had sent me websites and a paragraph back, helping me out. And again, that's what networking is all about.
It
How can we bring
absolutely
value to
is.
one another? I have a question for you, Mark.
Are you struggling to hire the right talent or keep your team motivated? At DMW Consultants, we specialize in designing compensation strategies that help businesses of all sizes attract top talent, retain key employees, and protect your bottom line. With over 31 years of experience, we've mastered the art of building cost-effective, comprehensive, and competitive pay structures that position your company as an employer of choice. Let us help you implement a sustainable compensation framework that drives success. Visit dmwconsultants.com to learn more. DMW Consultants, your compensation solution for strategic solutions, real results.
Tell us, because we have a wide audience. Melissa and I's podcast just hit top 50% of podcasts of 2024, which is a major
congratulations.
Thank
you. So we have a wide audience, and we've hit 17 different countries as well. So there's a lot of people listening. Let's start talking a little bit about what is the one big misconception about American politics that you think most people need to understand?
I would say that politics in America is not as divisive as it appears on the surface. I think that the media does a lot to try to create divisiveness because it sells papers. It gets readers, it gets viewers. And, when you go to Washington, D.C., or you go to a state capital such as Charleston, West Virginia, you find that there's really more that's in common than is in difference. And so I've found in my political career is that really most people that are involved for the right reasons. We may have a different way to get there, but we really are trying to do what's best for the people that we serve. And I think a lot of people look at the political process and they're kind of jaded because they think that it's all infighting and it's all, everyone's trying to angle for a certain their point of view. And truly, when it comes down to the daily work of governance, that's not the way that it works at all. And there's a lot of synergy and a lot of commonness that's found. And I think that's a misconception. People feel like everybody's at everyone's throats all the time, and that's truly not the case.
Yeah, I feel like the majority of people, I think, fall in the center, and you have the extreme left and you have the extreme right. But I feel like the majority of people kind of really do sit in that center. And I feel like that makes your statement just there absolutely true. There's more that we have in common that divide us. And
Absolutely.
Do you find that?
And yes, I agree with you, Melissa. That's what I found throughout my political career is if you're willing to listen, you're willing to sit at the table and come up with common sense solutions, they're available. And those solutions cross party lines. It crosses philosophical divides, just coming up with common sense solutions that make governing happen every single day.
Absolutely. I get excited when my son, my youngest son's in the Air Force at the Air Force Academy. And when he comes home, I like to talk politics with him because of course he's a Gen Zer. So he has a very different view of politics than I do. And he said something to me that was very interesting. And I don't know if you find this. He said, when you're his age, younger, you tend to have a different view of the world. So you are a little bit more open-minded, liberal. He said a lot of times people get more conservative as they get older, not super conservative, but they tend to be a little bit more conservative because they're making more money. And as you get older, you're less open to change. So you become a little bit more conservative. Do you find that to be true?
Yes, by and large, that is true. And I think what happens is, once a person, gets out of school, they get into the workforce, they begin to see things differently. They begin to look at taxation differently. They begin to look at, economics differently because now, they are living every day the challenges of raising a family and having a career and those types of things. And I think it just changes the viewpoint a little bit. People begin to look at, hey, what is politicians and the political things that are happening. What effect does that have on me and my family every single day? And this election, I believe, was all about that. Was what effect does this decision I'm making have upon my family and our ability to live the American dream?
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
One of the things I think might confuse people, because there are elements where I lean very conservative, and there are lenses that I look down and I can't help but notice that there's a major difference between empowering the American people and enabling the American people. And we don't have to go down any certain avenue because there are a handful of things that we could talk about in relation to that. But I think as I've gotten older, you want to just give everyone everything. I'm learning this in parenting right now. Like, as a mom, I'm learning what the difference between enabling my child and empowering them. And sometimes you have to put people in positions to understand their true highest potential. And I don't always see that in a non-conservative way. And I don't know if you guys want to swing in on anything like that, but that's just my personal opinion, is empowering versus enabling in certain elements.
Well, isn't that the Browning philosophy?
Absolutely.
It
is.
absolutely is. I think,
Yeah.
you're living the philosophy of Browning in parenting. And with having a granddaughter who is 2 years old and a grandson that's due here in the next couple of weeks, what can I do as a grandparent? What can I do to help support my children? Well, you don't do the job for them. You help them. You give them the advice. You share your experience with them, and you help them along the way. And I think what's happened in our country for a segment of our economy is that we do enable instead of helping, instead of giving them the ability to have the tools and resources to do it themselves. They depend too much upon government agencies and entities to do it for them.
Yeah. How powerful of a change will that be when more people are empowered? And there's something you forgot on that list, and that's education. Like, tools and resources is great, but the power of knowledge is just so incredibly important. Being told, hey, this is going to be hard, but you can do this. Here's the tools and resources. We're also going to teach you how.
I have a question for the both of you, actually. So, as a former educator in a high school, Brittany, and as someone in government, Mark, the talk is they want to dismantle the Department of Education. So I would love to get both of your takes on that. Brittany, especially being in a high school before, do you think that's necessary? Do you think it's detrimental? I'd love to hear the argument for it and against it.
Mark, you want to take this first?
Sure. As far as dismantling the Department of Education, the reason that would make sense is because it's a decentralization of the process. Every state is different. Every state's Department of Education works differently. And being in the cabinet in the state of West Virginia, I got to see firsthand how the Department of Education in West Virginia works. And it's different. It's different than it would be in another state, a larger state. And so decentralizing and having the ability to take the money that the federal government currently funds and send it directly to the states for the states to utilize the way that makes sense to the state is the value of it. A disadvantage could be that standards are different as a result of decentralization. Changing the standards, is that going to be helpful, especially if you have a child educated in West Virginia who wants to go to college in another state? And so that's the con. But the pro is being able to utilize those resources the way the people on the ground see fit to utilize it.
Okay.
Really good points. Glad that you spoke about that, because that's not the direction I'm going to go in. This is a loaded question. We could do a whole podcast episode on this, but when an educator has to teach to a test that the state says, hey, listen, your kids are going to take this test at the end of the year, and you have to have them score a certain percentage. It makes it very difficult for teachers to bring autonomy, creativity, love, trends, and true understanding of how society works into the classroom. Teachers become overwhelmed and burdened with, my kids just have to do well on this end of the year test. And I think that that is felt in every facet of education, both on the teachers, the parents, the kids. I worked heavily with special education, and the trauma that those kids experience because they needed to pass, in Massachusetts, you had to pass the MCAS exam in order to graduate. Students with learning disabilities were significantly impacted. Their families were significantly impacted. So I think when it comes to dismantling education, I think we absolutely have to revisit the why we're doing what we're doing, and is it really working? It's not working. And I think taking a hard look at a better way is absolutely necessary, and it's long overdue.
And that's one of the big advantages of decentralization is it gives the the county school boards the ability to work with people that are struggling, and having those resources further down, closer to them, that allows them to be able to make the changes that are needed. The more power you give to the local educators, the better generally the education quality is going to be.
1,000%. Yep.
Love that. And you're right. We could do a whole podcast just on that. But I want to talk about what you see, Mark, as priorities for the incoming administration. What do you feel is going to be their first priority or top 3 priorities?
I would say, first of all, they need to, and they are going to, take a look at waste, fraud, and abuse within the system. And they've created a new office, this Department of Governmental Efficiency, that's going to look at the way our money is spent. When you're spending over $1 trillion a year more than you're taking in, that's unsustainable. And so having a watchdog that's going to look into how do we improve the efficiency within the government. And there's been criticism, that this is not going to work because it has to go through the legislative process. But here's the thing. There's a lot of money that's spent within the administration of government, and that's handled by the chief executive, that can be changed without legislative approval. And so having the ability to be able to look at government and say, hey, we have inefficiencies that need to be addressed. If we address these inefficiencies, we can save billions of dollars each year. And so that is important. Another thing is the issue of immigration. We've got to address immigration in a common sense way that makes sure that the people who are coming to our country legally have a path to citizenship. And we've got to stop the influx of illegals coming into the United States. And so the transition is different this time than it was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, the transition was a lot of insiders were a part of the senior leadership team of the Trump administration. And as you're looking at the appointments that are being made now, it's being made from people that more espouse Trump's philosophy of smaller government, decentralization, and attacking these very important points. Another thing is deregulation is extremely important. We are completely mired by red tape that does not allow us to open our country for energy development. It doesn't allow for us to be able to use the creative minds that made this country great. And so those are 3 things that he's going to attack very early on in the administration.
I'm excited about the Department of Government Efficiency from a standpoint of I personally, regardless of whether I am left or right, I think most Americans feel like there is a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse happening in the government. And I feel like this is a great opportunity. Not many people are happy about Elon Musk being ahead of that, but I'm here nor there with it, but I absolutely feel like it is 100% necessary because we are wasting so much money in our government, so much money.
You hear the most egregious examples of, toilet seats costing $850, but there are a lot of other things that are inefficient within the government. And so being able to have a team of people that are going to be looking at those contracts, making sure that we're getting what the taxpayers of our country are paying for is going to benefit our country.
Yeah, I agree. What is involved with a transition team? What is involved to ensure that the incoming president can really hit the ground running? Is there something that prevents it? Is there something that makes it more efficient?
So a lot of, before getting involved in the process of state government, because we're going through a transition now. I mentioned earlier, my former boss is going to the U.S. Senate. And so we're doing a transition in the state of West Virginia. And a lot of people, in my mind, I thought, transition would be a group of, a dozen people sitting around a table at, somewhere nearby the Capitol and making decisions of who would do what. It's much more involved than that. Let me just give you an example. There is a booklet called the Plum Book, and it is a book 232 pages long that are the direct appointments the President of the United States makes. Of that, 200 pages is single-spaced jobs that are direct appointments from the President. So the job of the transition starts way sooner than Election Day. It starts months in advance. And for the Trump administration this time, there were several teams working on the transition before the election took place. So in other words, once it was known that the president was going to be the nominee, he immediately started work on the transition. That's a little bit different than it happened 4 years ago. 4 years ago, the energy and focus primarily was spent on winning a primary and then winning a general election. And so when the election was over, they were scrambling with the transition. It's much more organized now. There's more people that have been concentrating on this for a longer period of time. And you're going to see two things from that. Number one, you're going to see a much easier transition as far as having the people in place. But you're also going to see philosophically that the people that are in place are more aligned with the president's philosophies.
Interesting. Now, when you got into politics, was this something that from a young age you were like, I want to be in politics? Or was it something you got more excited about as you got into local government?
Yeah, I think it really happened more organically for me than that. It's not anything that I ever really had a burning desire to be a part of. But as I began to see what was happening, particularly in our state with our economic condition, I felt compelled if there was anything that I could do that would make things better for our citizens in our state, I needed to do it. And so that was what really got me involved, was not anything that, burning desire from youth, but just looking out and saying, hey, this is broken. How do we fix it?
Mm-hmm. I think so many people forget that statement, we the people. There's a lot of individuals who complain about what is. I mean, I don't say this to them always directly, but part of me wants to say, what are you doing about it? Like, are you scrolling on Instagram? Are you watching reels? Like, is that really your involvement? You just listen and
just
have an
make nasty
opinion?
Comments back and forth.
We the people. And part of why I've had this like burning sensation to get involved is because of that statement. I found myself having comments and opinions, and then I'm like, wait a minute, what am I doing about it? Currently nothing. And that motivation that we all have inside of us, again, it's really not about left or right. It's about what are my talents and what's my knowledge that I can bring to the table to help people feel more empowered to make choices, because at the end of the day, we all have the option to vote, and that vote stands for we the people. And that's what I have to say about that.
Well, John Kennedy said, there's a famous quote from John Kennedy where he said that people see the world as it is and ask why. I see the world as it can be and ask why not. And it comes down to having a vision for what the future can look like. And for me, sitting as a small business owner in a small town in West Virginia, I looked out and said, this can be better. What can I do to contribute to make this better? And, been able to see the last decade where things have improved drastically in our state because of leadership change, philosophy changes. And so, it comes down to vision, Brittany, just like you said, looking at it and saying, I can make a difference. I may not be some great, mighty, powerful person, but I am a person, and I do have a vision for a better country, and I want to do something to serve it.
Yeah. It's exciting when you can get involved at the local level. And I have a neighbor, and she and I actually thought about getting involved at our local level here in Massachusetts because we were excited about things that we wanted to see change. And so that's something that we are thinking about doing. But if you have that desire to make a change, don't hesitate. Get out there and try to make the changes, because if you're not happy with what's happening in the world now, you have the opportunity to change it. And I know a lot of people were, some people, we live in Massachusetts, so it's obviously a very blue state. And a lot of people are just really upset. And I said, you know what? In 4 years, actually in 2 years, if you don't like what's happening, you have the ability to change it. You get out there, you can make a difference. And I think people forget that. They get apathetic to the whole, politics and government, and they just feel like they don't make a difference, but they really do. I mean, as an example, and I just heard about this through social media. There was a young gentleman in Pennsylvania. His name is Scott Pressler, and he's adorable. Long hair, he's adorable. And he wanted things to change in his area, in his government, in the national government. So he single-handedly went to the Amish community and literally registered, or helped them all register to vote. And I personally feel like he is one of the reasons why Pennsylvania was red.
Wow.
You know why? Because he single-handedly took it in upon himself to go out there and get people to vote. And I think that's the biggest thing, is there are so many communities out there that don't vote because they don't know how to register, or they don't feel like they need to because, it's going to be the same old, same old. And that is a great example of somebody who really wanted to see change. So he took it in his hands and he went out there and he registered them all, and it made a difference. It made a huge difference for him.
Well, that's the thing, too, is that you don't have to put on your political hat and try to get a seat in politics to make a change. Yep. We all wake up every day with the same opportunity of choice. What are you going to do today? Mm-hmm. Maybe you can join the parent-teacher operations at your kid's school. Like, there are so many things that we can do to enlist change, and it's just a matter of doing it. And I just want to say this before I turn this over to Mark, because I know he has some comments to make. But hate is never going to make change. Hate is like running in molasses. And I cannot read something or listen to something that's coming from the frequency of hate. That is not the type of information that I want to absorb, because I know it's going to get me nowhere, whether it's in my knowledge or my ability to make a difference. I think we all have to be more discerning with the difference between hate and genuine criticism that has an open-minded opportunity for conversation to have differences. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think there's a misconception today between open dialogue and asking questions and hate. And I think, a lot of people are, particularly the media, is categorizing differences as being hateful. Mm-hmm. And, just because I differ with you doesn't mean that I hate you. To Brittany's point, you can't be a good leader. You cannot be a good servant of people with hatred in your heart. So it has to come from a heart of love. And, back to Melissa's point, it's, one person saying, what can I do to make a difference? When you think about the difference that this young man made just by asking himself, what can I do today? For me, it started in 2000 when I walked into a Republican headquarters in my hometown and said, hey, is there anything I can do to help? And I kind of became the IT person for the local party. And that's how it started for me. It's just, what can I do to make a difference? What is it that you need my help to do? Here I am. I want to lend my talents to the cause. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't take a lot. It just takes a willingness to be able to step out of your comfort zone and just do something. And we saw that, the efforts of one person made a huge difference in a state of extreme consequence in this past election.
I have to bring spirituality into this conversation. I have to, because we're talking about hate, doesn't make a difference. Now let's talk about love. when you are in your heart center and when you're operating from a place of love and service, you can hear the whispers of God. You can hear the whispers of the universe telling you what your next step is. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why it's like, well, just, you don't have to have a whole plan before you of how every little detail is going to work. All you have to do is show up in the here and the now and be open hearted, and you can hear what that next move is. So for you, Mark, you entered in to help people with tech, right? And then that was the one little whisper you needed, which led to that, which led to that, which led to that. Can you imagine if that day you woke up and you weren't ready to be of service and you didn't step into that small, what back then was a small little thing you thought, but it snowballed. So anyone listening here, if you feel stuck in your life or in your career and you feel disconnected from people and yourself, just start by playing around with what is your heart telling you to do today, and listen to those whispers.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yes.
So I have a question for you. Do you get to go to the inauguration, or will you be going?
I may be going to the inauguration. So, the opportunity exists for people to go to the inauguration. They have to reach out to their delegation for, the representatives that represent them in Washington. But there's an opportunity for people to go to the inauguration. And I very well may be at the inauguration.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have a follow-up question. Can Melissa and I come?
I was just going to say, do you think there's a place for the job chicks? My son is like, do you really want to go? I said, I don't care who would be president. To go to any inauguration would be incredible. I think there's a place for the job chicks.
You guys should set up a job chick podcast from the Capitol lawn.
Right? We could get a press pass.
Yep.
There you go.
So anybody out there is listening?
To answer your question, yes, you have an opportunity to go to the inauguration. You have to reach out to your representatives there in your state and request access, and you possibly can come.
Mm-hmm.
Consider it done, Melissa. You know that I'll be on that in 20. I will get that done in 24 hours.
Yes, that would be very exciting. I just think any political event like that, it doesn't matter what party you stand for. I just think, to me, because I go to see events at the Air Force Academy, right? And I tell people, you're never more proud to be an American. It's not about, are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? When you go to something like that, like an inauguration or an event at the military, you're never more proud to be an American. And when they are jumping out of the planes with the flags attached to them, or they get the 15 flyover, I have goosebumps and tears in my eyes because it's so emotional. It really, really is. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, we do it better in the United States with peaceful transfer of power than anywhere else in the world. Mm-hmm. And to be a witness, to be able to see that firsthand is an amazing thing, because like you said, there are vast differences between the outgoing administration and the incoming administration, but there will be a handover of power on the 20th of January. That is going to be an amazing spectacle to watch. And I will tell you that people all throughout the world look at this and go, why can't we do it the same way in our country? Mm-hmm. And so being a citizen of our country and seeing that power being transitioned over peacefully is just an amazing thing. And it's a testament to the power and resolve of the American people to do it the right way.
Absolutely. I will say to that, 4 years ago, I was disappointed that our outgoing president was not at the peaceful transfer of power. Much as I will support any president that's in office. He is our leader, whether it's Joe Biden, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Bill Clinton, whether it's, Hillary Clinton, if she had won. But I do feel like that for me was a little, you want to make sure that you're giving that message to people that it is a peaceful transfer of power. And I am happy that that's going to be this way. And I also feel he's a very different president this time. He was very different the first 4 years. having that 4 years in between and now coming back, I feel like he is going to be a very different president. His demeanor is different. There's not as many mean tweets out there. So I'm hopeful for something that's going to happen over the next 4 years.
And I'll say this, remember, a lot of people were saying that the President Trump will never leave the White House. He's going to fight this to the bitter end. If you recall, on Inauguration Day 4 years ago, he boarded a plane and he left. Mm-hmm. He left peacefully. And so, although there was a lot of a lot of questions about that election, a lot of questions about whether it was done right, and those questions will continue for years to come, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, we still had a peaceful transfer of power.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. That I agree with. I just wished he was there to shake the hand and pass the torch. That's all. That's my biggest thing with it. But I'm supporting going forward, and I'm hoping that we are going to have some really big needed changes in our country.
Yeah, that's my next question. This is a personal question for you, Mark. What are you most excited to see because you believe this is what our country needs the most right now?
So the thing I'm most excited to see is not just different faces, but a different philosophy coming to Washington, D.C. that approaches the finances of our country as a business owner and working with a chief financial officer would look at their business finances. Mm-hmm. So looking at finances in a way that says, I want to spend this money as though our own money, because ultimately it is our money because we pay taxes into the system.
We the people.
Exactly. And so that's what I'm most excited about, is to see a totally different philosophy that comes to DC that says, hey, we're going to manage your money better. And I believe if they're effective at doing this, they will get a lot of support, particularly from the citizens of our country. And, ultimately, citizens vote, and they have a lot of influence on their representatives. And so if we're successful at making this transition, looking at it differently, then I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot more coalescing around making government more efficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say, I like to do research. I like to learn things. I want to make sure that I'm making informed decisions. And there was a lot of talk about JD Vance and is he going to be a good vice president? And, I like to do my own research, but I also did watch Hillbilly Elegy. I don't know if you saw it, Brittany. You've got to watch it.
Okay.
It is about JD Vance's young life, what he went through, and his mom eventually overcoming addiction, and the tough life he had. And at the end of that movie, I had a completely different view of him, thinking, wow, look where he came from. He was literally living in poverty and he overcame so much. And he is the vice president. He's the vice president of the United States. And here is this young kid who, his mom's addicted, marrying this one, living with this one. The grandmother's taking care of him. She's, trying to get meals on wheels for everybody in the household. And now he's the vice president. Like, if that's not an American story, I don't know what is.
Yeah, literally, JD Vance is living the American dream before our life, an American dream that is possible for anyone who is willing to do the work. It goes back to what Brittany was talking about earlier. Empowering, not enabling. And JD had, every opportunity to go one way or the other. And what he did is he chose to use the resources that were available to him to make his life better. And not only that, he made the life of his entire family better. I would contend that his mom found the path to recovery because of the example that her son was setting for her. And we have that ability because of where we live and the freedoms that we have. We are able to positively affect the people around us, our family. We can break that mold. And that's exactly what he did. And, for that, Melissa, I agree with you totally. He has my admiration and respect. And it also goes to his ability to lead because he stepped out made the change for himself, he's going to be able to say, hey, you can do it. I did it. You can do it.
Absolutely.
And he's got the credibility to say that because he actually did it.
Absolutely. It's a must see, Brittany. You've got to watch that.
I'm really excited. I can tell a lot about a person by the way they communicate, because in someone's delivery is their passion and their intelligence, and that can tell you so much about someone. For him, you can feel his passion and you can totally feel his intelligence when he communicates. But I don't know if anyone has noticed the way his wife looks at him when she is standing next to him. If you're listening to this and you haven't noticed this yet, I want you to pay close attention. The way that his wife looks at him, you can tell I believe that's a good man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. In the beginning, I was like, I don't know. But now I'm all in on JD Vance. He's
you can tell a lot about a person the way that their family feels about them.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know a true person's heart?
Absolutely.
It's who they are when the doors are closed and they're living with their family behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you, Brittany. There's just a look of admiration she has in her face every time she looks at him. And that tells me a lot about who he is a person when the public eye is not looking at him.
It's kind of like how Tracy looks at you. Hi, Tracy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I could go on and on and on for probably a whole nother hour talking about politics, but I want you to tell me, Mark, or tell our listeners, what is the one thing that keeps you going in politics? And, what's the biggest difference that you want to make as a politician?
So what keeps me going is the fact that I have been a part of major change, and I've seen the benefit that it makes to everyday citizens. And knowing that, you can play a part in the process that makes that happen is what energizes me and keeps me moving, and hopefully continue to be involved in whatever way that I can to make sure that our state and our country is the absolute best it can be, because I truly believe that our brightest days can be ahead of us. But we have to look at things differently. We have to manage things differently. I've seen it happen in our state. I've seen the results that it happened because of it. And so that's what keeps me going, keeps me energized, and keeps me hopeful. It's children and my grandchildren in the future that we can leave for them.
Mm-hmm. Before we say goodbye, I want to tell our audience members that you are very welcoming to networking conversations. So audience members, I am going to link Mark's LinkedIn profile in the description. Feel free to connect with him. If you feel inspired to do so, also reach out to him, send him a message. I'm sure he's more than happy to connect with you. Mark is involved with energy projects. Do you want to say a little bit about that too? Because that might also, generate a good audience for you with the work you're doing with energy.
Sure. So I have a consulting firm that I founded actually before I became a cabinet secretary. And what we've seen in our state, and it's a national trend too, is being able to utilize our natural resources that we have in coal and in natural gas for renewable alternative energy. And so we've got several projects that we're working on in the state of West Virginia. We've got a few that we're actually working on other parts of the country as well, just trying to bring to bear all the resources we possibly can. We've got a huge need for energy generation. It's only going to increase with more demand for technology. And so being a part of that is extremely exciting. It's very rewarding. And been able to meet some wonderful people within the Browning Network that have been able to help me answer questions and help me as I'm helping companies and investors get involved in this arena.
That's really good to know. I have a few clients that I can connect you with as well. It'll be some great conversations. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us today. Such an enjoyable conversation. Like I said, we could go on for another hour, but we appreciate you taking time out of your day, and we'll look for you at the inauguration if Brittany and I are there with our lovely microphones. So to everyone out there, we thank you for listening to another episode of The Job Chicks, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys.